Hello and welcome to Cover to Cover, and a happy birthday to us. As I record this, we've just gone past the anniversary of the first episode, and this is book number 23. Behind me, you'll see many of the books we've reviewed on the show. Some are missing because they were delivered in PDF format. A reminder that when Cover to Cover began, we were deep in hard lockdown with no interprovincial travel allowed and no bookshops open. At that time, a lot of publishers put a freeze on new product, and it took a long time to return to anything approaching normal. So I'm happy to say that the trickle of new books is fast becoming a flood, and there's no doubt that the industry will be stronger for the innovations necessary just to keep heads above water in the time of COVID. One of the things I should mention is that at least 25% of the books reviewed on Cover to Cover are self-published, and clearly the famous South African entrepreneurial spirit is alive and well in the world of books. Thank you to everyone who has got in touch with us, and as usual, let me reiterate that if you've got a book that you'd like us to review, we would love to hear from you. Ditto if you'd like to respond to anything I've said. There's the email address, sean.everett@supersport.com, and I should also just add here that Cover to Cover wouldn't exist without Sean, so a big thanks to my producer. Now, on with the business at hand, and today's book is this one. Just a Moment, the autobiography of Schalk Burger, written with Michael Flismus, published by Jonathan Ball, and in the shops now, retailing at R275 and available from all the usual online outlets. Now, before I go any further, let's deal with the conflicts of interest, and they are manifold in this book. I've had plenty of occasions on Cover to Cover where I've known the author, but for Just a Moment, I'm friends with both the author and the subject. Michael Flismus is an old work colleague, and for the last decade at least, I think it would be fair to describe him as South Africa's leading golf writer. And as for Schalk Burger, well, I shared many a commentary box with him in the early 1990s when he was working for Supersport, and I've been royally entertained at his wine farm in Wellington, and have also written and said nice things about his eldest son. And with that out of the way, let's talk about the eldest son, the incredible Schalk. In very few relationships, I suppose, do the exploits of your own child convince you to add the words senior to your name. But that's exactly what Schalk has done here, adding the letters SNR. Schalk's a Springbok in his own right. He's a tremendously successful businessman and a wine farmer, and all of those stories populate this book. But the rugby prowess of his son, Schalk Jr., is rightly celebrated worldwide. And therefore, I suppose, the letters SNR were added to the cover of the book to make sure no one looking for the younger Schalk's life story would be disappointed. Although I'm happy to say that younger Schalk doesn't look anything like his dad. Schalk Jr.'s story is a vital part of his dad's tale. And within these pages, the young man's journey from birth to international icon is well covered. But there's no favoritism in proper parenting. And so younger son Tiaan and daughter Renee are also an intimate part of the book. And indeed, there are some dramatic moments in the lives of all three involving testing times for the whole family. Schalk Sr.'s early life is beautifully delineated. Growing up in Paarl, dreaming of being a racing driver or a cricketer, beginning his rugby journey at Paarl Gym, playing for Marties at the insistence of Dr. Darnie Craven, and ultimately receiving his Springbok call-up while playing for a coloured club, Western Province League, the first man to do that. Schalk is not your average white Afrikaner Western Cape Springbok. For a start, his mother was Welsh and a member of Black Sash, and he didn't grow up speaking Afrikaans at home. But in the chapter that he calls Born a Contradiction, he points out that his father, also Schalk, was a member of the pro-Nazi Grey Shirts, and his brother Johan became leader of the Junior National Party in the Western Cape. By contrast, Schalk has always been a free spirit, and those who know him well know that he is at his happiest when wrapping his enormous hands around an acoustic guitar and singing the hits of the 60s and 70s. He is, however, as I mentioned earlier, a formidable businessman, having been a founding partner in the sports marketing company Megapro back in 1986. Megapro was in the vanguard of companies that thrived on rugby's move to professionalism in the mid-90s, and Schalk's ability To sit down and deal over a glass of red wine was a large part of his success. Well, once Schalk left Megapro, he bought the wine farm Velbedacht in Wellington, and it is this venture that has occupied his time for the last 20 years. Schalk's voice in this book is at its most passionate when discussing wine. He loves everything about it, from the soil that nurtures the vines through the vats that control the fermentation process, the debate around corks and screw tops. Just a Moment is not your normal autobiography. It jumps around in time and place, and it's notable for what it leaves out as much as for what it puts in. Personally, I would have liked more of the stories that make Schalk one of this country's finest after-dinner speakers. The story of Michael Hills under the high ball at Otanica Park, or Naas Botha being stopped by the traffic cops in Italy, or indeed of Schalk knocking himself out on his own garage door. But don't get me started. There are times in the book when it seems like Schalk is trying to settle a few scores, giving his side of the story that the press got wrong. He has little time for the media or the Watson family of Port Elizabeth, while the police receive a thorough lambasting. But this is Schalk's story, so he has the right to tell it the way that he wants it. Suffice to say that Michael Flismus has done a grand job of putting the big man's life together, although I'm certain that his liver took quite a battering in the process. It's well illustrated, engaging, and a very readable 6 out of 10. That's it for today. Let's give a nod to the cover of the book. That lovely picture of Schalk behind 3 glasses of red wine, which is fairly regular for him. And this is my favourite wine story. On August the 4th, 1693, the Benedictine monk Dom Perignon came running up from the monastery cellar whence he had gone to sample a new invention, champagne. Overcome with the joy of the experience, he shouted, "Come quickly, brothers, I'm tasting the stars."